Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. If you all want to take your seats and relax, and you're going to have, I think you're going to enjoy tonight's presentation. As most of you probably know, I'm Barbara Malibranch. I'm the Culture of Life Coordinator for Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish. And we have a wonderful pro-life ministry. Some of our members are here tonight helping. We have two very lovely information tables for more information. One from CULFs, who are our guests tonight, and the 40 Days for Life table from our own pro-life ministries. So feel free to visit those after the talk. Tonight we are privileged to welcome Dr. George Delgato, a board-certified physician in family medicine, as well as hospice and palliative care medicine. He is the medical director of Culture of Life Family Services and Abortion Pill Reversal. He is also the developer of the abortion pill reversal process. We also welcome Melissa Sanchez from Culture of Life Family Services. She works in the family services area of CULFs. So tonight, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Delgato.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. So we have a lot of fun things to talk about today. We're going to, just in case people are still trickling in, I want to tell you a little bit about Culture of Life Family Services and all that we do. We have offices in Escondido as well as in San Diego, and we are the only Catholic pregnancy help center in the county, as well as the only pregnancy help center that is intimately associated with the full spectrum family medicine practice. So we like to say we take care of patients from the womb to the tomb. And that means that everything we do, say, or advise is totally consistent in accord with traditional Catholic teaching. So that's very important in these days because our faith is being attacked on all fronts, and especially in this very secular mission territory where we are living now, that it's so more important now than ever, not just for women who are pregnant and who are in crisis pregnancies, so that they can hear the option for life, but also for children who, when they go to doctor's offices, they're asked, what pronouns should we use when we address you? And all sort of outrageous things like that. And also when we have, we're taking care of grandma and grandpa, and somebody's wondering if, well, should we stop feeding grandma and grandpa because their life no longer has meaning. And so it's good to have resources like us who will give the Catholic perspective and the life-affirming perspective. So that's what we're all about, and there's some information there on our table. For those of you ladies who are interested, coming up in the spring there will be our Ladies' Tea, which is always a very exciting event, and Melissa can tell you more about that. And then I'll tell you a little bit about Steno Institute. It's a nonprofit that I started in 2018. It's named after Blessed Nicholas Steno, and you can read about Blessed Nicholas on our website if you're interested. But he was a physician and a scientist in the 17th century. All of you have a duct in your cheek that secretes saliva from the parotid gland. If you ever suck on a lemon and you feel kind of stimulated on one side or the other, that's the duct there is called duct of Steno, named after him because he discovered it. He's also known as the father of modern geology, stratification and fossils and all of that, all really started with him. So very, very interesting scientist and physician who later went on to become a bishop and was a very holy bishop. So I like the combination of faith and reason that he embodied. So I started Steno Institute to increase awareness, education, and research around abortion pill reversal. We'll be talking a little bit about that as we go on. But I want to really center our talk about what the pro-life landscape is in America in 2024. What are we facing and what's going on? And it's important to know with abortion pill reversal, that I'll get into later, it's not too late to save a life. If you're interested in some articles and videos, you can go to our website, stenoinstitute.org, and go to /resources. You can also take a picture of this QR code with your camera and get to the link. If you're slow to get your phone up, I'll have the same slide at the end of the presentation, so don't panic. So this is the pro-life landscape as of May 2023, which looks pretty much the same now as it did then. And you can see that the gray states, gray is for SAD, those are the pro-abortion states. And the blue and green and yellow states are all the pro-life states. And our country, as you know, over the last 20 to 50 years has slowly become more and more polarized. And that polarization then became much more accelerated, I think, on June 24th, 2022, when the Dobbs decision came down. The Dobbs decision, of course, was about 49 and a half years after Roe v. Wade, and it threw down Roe v. Wade, and no longer was there a constitutional right to abortion in the United States, which is a great thing. It was a great day in history for us to see that happen, that Roe v. Wade was overturned. However, there were some expected consequences, some that I definitely foresaw, but some that were somewhat unexpected consequences. And that's that the pro-abortion states would really double down on abortion. And you saw things like in California, Proposition 1 being passed. In Michigan, a similar proposition was passed just this last, in 2023. And then you have other states where the pro-abortion forces are going in and they have strong financial support from people like George Soros and those organizations. And they're really pushing these ballot initiatives, or they're influencing the legislators to pass laws to make abortion enshrined in their laws, and like in California, in our Constitution. And so it's really then set those boundaries even more. And I think when you think about it, the liberal side of our country, I think, has no greater commitment than to abortion. And I think you see it in the vigorousness of how they've defended abortion and how angry they become when you talk about being pro-life. So it really is, I think they almost put abortion higher than they would put politics to get themselves reelected. I think they're so committed to it. And I really think that it's a very evil agenda, of course, and I think it's not just politics to get elected. I think it's a very deep ideology that goes all the way deep into their hearts and deep into the core of the movement. And fundamentally, it comes from the evil one himself. Because if you think about it, the worst kinds of evils are always a corruption of what is good, right? So think about what's one of the greatest goods and one of the holiest things that God created is the family, father, mother, and child. So the devil corrupts that by leading people to become child molesters or partakers in incest. So you take something that's a great good and you flip it into an evil. When it comes to abortion, think about what's the greatest gift God gave us, right, is himself, the most holy Eucharist. And what did our Lord say at the Last Supper, and what do the priests say at every Mass when he holds up the host? This is my body, right? And what's the mantra of the pro-abortion movement? This is my body. See? So they've taken the greatest good and flipped it into the greatest evil. What else is the Eucharist? It's the sacrifice, right? It's the unbloody sacrifice. It's bringing us back to Calvary. It's the memorial of the sacrifice of Christ on the cross, right? Well, what is abortion? Just as the Eucharist makes Calvary present to us, well, abortion also makes present to now the bloody sacrifice of Moloch in the times in Canaan, the bloody sacrifices of the Aztecs. All of the child sacrifices that we've seen throughout history that have been demonic are made present in abortion. So you see the connections there. So just like the Eucharist makes Christ's sacrifice present, it makes those evil sacrifices present. So I think because of that, this is something that they will defend to the death. And I really foresee that this is not going to get any better. And it's not, I don't think it's too stretch of an imagination to see that we could break up into one pro-life country and maybe 1, 2, or 3 pro-abortion countries. Right now we're having cultural civil war, but we could have actual political and maybe even military civil war, because what we're talking about now is a much more polarizing and energized and strong issue than slavery was when the southern states seceded from the Union. So this is, I think, a very real danger for our country. And we have to, I don't say this to be dramatic or to scare you, but really just to point this out so that we see how important it is for us to be vigilant, to be spiritually very, very strong, and to know the enemy that is meeting us. That enemy is the evil one himself. And the evil one himself is the one behind abortion. It's not politics, it's not just an agenda, it's from the evil one himself, and we have to realize that, we have to admit it, and therefore we know that we never want to engage the devil directly. We always want to be behind the cross and always saying to ourselves, Jesus, I trust in you. And remember that he already won the battle. The battle has been won. So these are just us being faithful to what he wants us to do, but the battle has already been won. All right, so even before the Dobbs decision on June 24th, 2022, the percentage of chemical abortions have been increasing in our country. And chemical abortion was introduced in the year 2000, and you can see a steady uptick, which is, the slope here is steeper since 2017. The estimate now in 2024 is that 60 to 65% of all abortions in the United States are chemical abortions instead of surgical abortions. So it's becoming much more common for a variety of reasons. One is that the abortionists are getting older. There are fewer of them. Fewer doctors want to do abortions. Number two, it's becoming more readily available. Women see it as a more private way to have an abortion, although them not having the clinic worker there, at least holding her hand, makes them much more forlorn. They're in their bathrooms, passing their their preborn child that they've killed. And because the abortion centers, they charge the same amount for the chemical abortion that they do for the surgical abortion. They don't have to pay the abortionist, they just have to pay for the medication. And so it's a cash cow for them. And so that's the other reason. Now, what has this led to since the COVID pandemic is that, well, two things. First of all, our current administration is not enforcing laws that control the sale of abortifacients by mail. And during the COVID epidemic, they suspended some of what are called the REMS, the risk evaluation and mitigation strategies that were put in place to protect women when mifepristone RU46 was first approved in 2000. And they did that to make it easier for women to obtain chemical abortions by telemedicine. And the mail order, they're not enforcing the laws that prohibit that. So we're seeing a proliferation of women going online, having a telehealth visit. How many of you have had telehealth visits with doctors or nurse practitioners? So you all kind of know what it's like, right? So imagine if you're pregnant and you're going on a telehealth visit, and they say, okay, did you do a pregnancy test? And you say yes, and you hold it up for the camera. Do they really know that's your pregnancy test? No, they don't, right? So it could be somebody else's pregnancy test. Or how do they know that you're really the patient who's going to take it? How do they know that there's not a man sitting 2 feet from you, scowling at you or holding a gun to you so that you'll say what they want you to say to the telemedicine practitioner? Right? They don't know that. They don't know any of that. They just know that they fill in all the boxes, they click yes, and then they mail it to you in the mail. That's telemedicine abortion. Now, how about mail order? That's where you simply go online, you answer a few questions, you do a quote consultation, and you say you're pregnant and that you're a woman. You could be a man typing all this in, right? And then they send you the abortion pills. So we're seeing a proliferation of this, and we're seeing a lot of medical risks that are possible because of this. First of all, there could be incorrect dating of pregnancy. Now, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says that when a woman's pregnant, you should not trust her that she remembers her last menstrual period. You need to do an ultrasound to correctly date her pregnancy. However, when it comes to chemical abortion, they say, well, ultrasound's really not important. You don't really need to have an ultrasound. But a woman could be, maybe she thinks she's 10 weeks pregnant, but maybe she's 20 weeks pregnant, and she takes the abortion pill, and it really doesn't work. It causes some bleeding, but she doesn't really abort, and she goes along with her pregnancy thinking that she's no longer pregnant. You can see that could cause lots of complications. Or maybe she misreads her pregnancy test, and she's not really pregnant, but she takes the mifepristone and the misoprostol. That could lead to health complications. Or she has an intrauterine device, and the package insert for mifepristone says that you should not take this if you have an intrauterine device in place. Why? Because the second drug, the misoprostol, which I'll talk about in a second, causes a lot of contractions. And having really strong contractions with an IUD in place could tear the cervix as it comes out. What about a woman not knowing her RH status? Well, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, of course, says that when a woman's pregnant, you need to know her RH status because 15% of the population is RH negative. And RH negative means your blood cells do not have a little protein called RH on the surface. Why does that matter? Well, we know when a woman is pregnant, there's always some mixing of the blood between the baby and the mother, right? If the baby happens to be RH positive and has that little protein on the red blood cell, when the blood mixes, the woman's immune system sees that little protein and says, aha, that's a foreign invader. I'm going to mount an immune response to it. And then that immune response can harm that baby. But ACOG says, well, we don't really care about that because the woman's having an abortion and the baby's going to die anyway, so we don't think she needs to check the RH. However, how many of you know about immune systems having memory? You heard about that before? You heard about that, right? That's a great thing about our immune systems. So if I get one infection now, my immune system is ready so that the next time that virus or that protein comes around, it sends an even bigger immune response because that's immune memory. So a woman who's RH negative and doesn't know it, has an RH positive baby, has an abortion, the blood mixes, there's a chance that her immune system will be sensitized, and then future, quote, wanted pregnancies that are RH positive, her immune system will attack them, and the babies will develop something called hydrops fetalis, which is congestive heart failure of the preborn baby, which often leads to stillbirth. So she could be dooming herself to stillbirth after stillbirth after stillbirth because no one checked her RH status because she was getting the abortion pill online. Next is, without an ultrasound, we might miss an ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy can happen anywhere from 0.5, maybe up to 1.5% of pregnancies, depending on where you are. We know that the rate of ectopic pregnancies is increasing. Well, if a woman doesn't have an ultrasound to prove that her baby's in the uterus, she takes mifepristone and misoprostol. How many of you saw the movie Unplanned? Saw it? Okay, you remember the scene where the Abby Johnson character is in the bathroom and there's blood all over? That's not an uncommon occurrence. Women bleed a lot with these chemical abortions. Well, this woman may have seen that movie, or she may have been told, you may have a very heavy period, so she's bleeding a lot. She thinks, okay, this drug is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But in reality, that tubal pregnancy is rupturing, and she's bleeding from the tubal rupture. So she's not going to the hospital because she doesn't think anything's wrong. Before she knows it, she's lost enough blood, or she's fainted. There's no one there, of course, because she's having the abortion in the privacy of her own home, so she dies on her bathroom floor. These are things that we are going to see, I can guarantee it. Next is a woman might be getting counterfeit or tainted drugs. These drugs, who knows where they're coming from? They may be coming from India, Pakistan. Who knows? Maybe it is mifepristone, maybe it isn't. We don't know. So she could be hurt by that. There are going to be social risks to women who are getting mail order and telemedicine, coerced abortions, the man sitting next to her or holding a gun to her, forced abortions, right? Surreptitious placement in food or drink. We've already seen cases already. There was a boyfriend whose girlfriend was pregnant. They went to lunch. She went to the bathroom. He slipped their abortion pill into her drink, and she aborted. Tools of sex traffickers, child molesters, and rapists. definitely this is going to be their tool. We know that sex traffickers, they don't want their girls to be pregnant because they want them to continue to be able to use them as prostitutes. So they're going to use this in order to abort the evidence of what they're doing. So important bottom lines about chemical abortions, that mifepristone and other chemical abortions are exactly like surgical abortions in two ways. One is the preborn baby ends up dead. Number two, the woman becomes another victim of the medical abortion complex. However, the key difference is that now chemical abortions are reversible. So before we go further, I want you to hear about a lady that Debbie and I both know. And Debbie's actually our very first abortion pill reversal hotline nurse. She's sitting right there, so I'm very glad that she's here. And she's going to be in this video.
I discovered I was pregnant for the second time when I was just about 19 years old. I had had my first child at 18 years old, so the thought of having two children at 19 years old led me to believe that I needed to have an abortion with my second child. I visited an abortion clinic. I wasn't really told what was going to be happening to my body, wasn't allowed to see my baby on a monitor. I was basically told that my chemical abortion was going to be quick, convenient, easy to hide, all things that I needed. And I took the first RU486 pill. As I sat outside of a Planned Parenthood clinic, literally after just taking the abortion pill, I immediately felt regret and like I needed to try to stop what I just started. I searched on my phone and found abortionpillreversal.com. They had a hotline number that advised anyone who had wanted to reverse the abortion pill, who had recently taken it, to call. After I called the hotline, a nurse answered named Debbie, and she basically told me that there was still hope for me and my baby, but that I just needed to get progesterone into my body and continue with injections of progesterone for several weeks following the abortion pill. Planned Parenthood told me that this likely would not work and my child could very well be deformed. These words replayed in my head for the rest of my pregnancy. I was very scared, but after I saw my son on the ultrasound and heard his heartbeat, I was filled with hope and encouragement, and I just knew that God had intervened and that I still had a chance to save my son, and I was just extremely happy and grateful. I look at Zechariah and I am just so thankful. I feel blessed that he's here because I know that it wasn't likely that he would be, that I had tried to abort him. I just look at him and I could not imagine my life without him. What I like most about being a mom is coming home to my kids. They're always so excited to see me. It's mommy, mommy, and that makes you feel so good. And just looking at them, I would never give up. They're the reason I go to school, the reason I go to work. I just have so much to live for, and I love that. Abortion is not a magic eraser. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And raising children, being a mom, no matter how young you are, no matter the difficulties you're going through in life, is still a blessing. And for anyone who's considering reversing their abortion, I would encourage you, and I would be happy to support you and walk with you and talk to you and give you the encouragement that you're going to need on that journey. I've known many women that have regretted their abortions, but I've never known one that has regretted choosing life for their child, because you don't. You love being a mom and you love those children once they're here.
Video. She was in Northern California when all this occurred. And since then, she's gone on to work for Heartbeat International, which now runs the Abortion Pill Reversal Network. And now she works for a group that does psychological research on abortion, what makes women choose abortion, and how we can approach them. So really doing some wonderful things with her life, not to mention her two beautiful boys who you saw there in the video. So let's talk about, I want to explain a little bit about how the abortion pill works, just so you have a better idea. So there are two drugs in the cocktail. The first is mifepristone, originally known as RU46, and the second is misoprostol. The mifepristone, the first one, is a progesterone receptor blocker, and that's what kills the baby. I'm going to go into that a little bit more detail now. And then the second one, misoprostol or cytotec, causes the uterus to contract, which then expels the remains of the preborn baby. That's why they have two drugs. We have a window of opportunity between the two drugs because we have an antidote for the first drug. We don't for the second. So when we see these women who want to reverse their chemical abortions, it's when they've taken the first drug, but before they've taken the second drug. So it's important to know that. So let's talk a little bit about how that mifepristone works and what progesterone does. So progesterone is, like the name implies, progestation. It is the hormone that's essential for pregnancy. Without progesterone, any woman who's pregnant would have a miscarriage every single time. Right? So it's very key for that. And it does several things, but one of the most important things that it does is that it acts like the superglue that holds the placenta to the wall of the uterus. It has to be very well adhered because, of course, the placenta is how the baby gets hydration and nutrition from the mother, and how the waste products from the baby go the other way from the baby to the mother and out. So if you think about the hormone being a key, like the picture there shows there, and a key goes into the keyhole, turns the lock, and a door opens, right? So think about the key being the hormone, the lock being the receptor, where the hormone goes, and the door opening being what we call the hormone effect. In this case, keeping the superglue so that the placenta stays attached to the wall of the uterus. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. How many of you have had the experience where you put a key into a lock, it fit in, but it didn't turn the lock? Frustration, right? Okay. So let's call that a false key. So what does that false key do? It blocks the lock. So while that key's in the lock, you can't put the real key in there, and so you can't open the door. So that's exactly what the mifepristone does. It's a false key that enters into the lock, but stays there and blocks the lock, blocks the receptor. And that's exactly how mifepristone works. That's why they developed it as an abortion causing drug, because they knew that it would go onto the progesterone receptor, but would not activate the progesterone receptor. Now, fortunately for us, that key doesn't stay there forever. It goes in and out. It's a dynamic process. So when the key comes out, if there's a good guy key ready there, it can go in, turn the lock, and open the door. So our theory was that we would give supplemental progesterone to increase the good guy keys so they would be lined up in front of the lock, so that when the bad key came out, there would be a better chance that the good guy key would go in there, turn the lock, and open the door. And we have those higher level of progesterones until the mifepristone washes out of the system. So that's pretty much how abortion pill reversal works, by having more good guy keys in front of the lock so that we can outcompete the bad keys. Now, estimates now, this slide is now outdated. I just received an email from Abortion Pill Reversal Network at Heartbeat International a couple of days ago that they are now saying that more than 5,000 babies have been saved by abortion pill reversal. And these are just the ones that they've been able to keep track of. We're sure there are many more than that. And women have been helped in all 50 states and in over 70 countries around the world. And we have networks now that have started in other places. We helped start a network in Australia many years ago when Debbie and I were more intimately associated with the network. And several years ago, I got an email from Dr. Alexei Fokin in Russia. He said, "Hi, Dr. Delgato, I found your website. I translated it into Russian, and I've been doing abortion pill reversal in Russia." So he's been doing that for several years now. And in fact, we might do a study in Russia on abortion pill reversal because our FDA here is blocking our study that we want to get going here. So imagine that. Isn't it an irony that it's going to be easier to do a study in Russia than the United States of America to save a life? So think about that. Why are they blocking it? Well, for the last 2 years, they have not told us why they're blocking it. They just keep stalling. Initially, they had some problems with our protocol, and we met all those concerns and tweaked our protocol so that it would be acceptable to them. But then it got to the point where they stopped giving us answers. They just said, "Oh, it's in review. It's in review. We can't tell you when we're going to give you a decision." When we talk about effectiveness, this is our survival comparison. If no treatment is offered to a woman who takes mifepristone only, we estimate that at best 25% of the time that preborn baby will survive. But with our best protocols, 68% of the time the baby will survive and actually will survive to birth. So really great chance of success here compared to not doing anything at all. As far as birth defects and preterm births, which are the most the potential complications of most concern, our study has shown that our birth defect rate is no greater than the general population. The general population, the birth defect rate is about 3%. In our big study, it was 2.7%, so about equal. Our preterm delivery rate was 2.7%, which is much better than the average in the United States of 10%. That's probably because of the progesterone that we give probably helps prevent preterm delivery. Now, we've gotten a lot of opposition from the medical establishment. Surprise, surprise, right? Because we know that ACOG is a very pro-abortion organization, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And in fact, they state unequivocally in some of their position papers that they advocate for, quote, women's choice, i.e. abortion. And they also state that they are an advocacy organization. They're not just a professional society, they're an advocacy group, and they advocate very strongly for abortion. Well-known medical abortion researcher, Dr. Mitchell Crennan at UC Davis, he designed a study that he said would, quote, disprove APR. And in fact, he was quoted in a news article saying that he, quote, wanted to own that. He wanted to own that and be the one who disproved APR. So he designed this study, which he canceled ostensibly because of safety concerns. And I want to tell you a little bit about that study. A couple of things that are very interesting. So he did a pre-trial power analysis, which is the way you do statistics to figure out how many subjects you'll need in a study in order to prove your point. So imagine if I were flipping coins, and if I flipped the coin 1,000,000 times, would you expect about 500,000 times it would be heads, 500,000 tails? Right? Makes sense. Let's say I only flipped it 4 times. Would you be surprised if it came up 3 times heads and only 1 time tail? You wouldn't, right? Just by chance it wouldn't have enough flips to even out. But let's say if I really wanted to prove that it would be 50% heads and 50% tails, I would do a pre-trial statistical analysis that would tell me, well, if you flip the coin 200 times, then you're going to get good results that you can depend on. That way I don't have to flip it 1,000,000 times and destroy my elbow. So this is a way to know so your study isn't bigger than it has to be, but that it's big enough so that you can prove what you want to prove. And so he did this statistical analysis before the study, and he determined he needed 40 patients in the study, 20 in each group. And he wanted to have one group, both groups would get mifepristone, and then one group would get placebo, a sugar pill, and the other group would get progesterone. And the 2 groups would not know what they were getting. The pills would be disguised, and the doctors who were giving them would not know what they were getting either. So from a scientific standpoint, it was very rigorous. It's what we call a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial. And so from that standpoint, it was very well designed. From an ethical standpoint, it was an unethical study, of course, because there was a group that only got placebo. That is, the babies would be doomed to die. And after 2 weeks, all the babies would be aborted, whether they survived or not. So definitely an unethical study, but from a scientific design, very well designed. So he determined he needed 40. But in the paper itself, when you read at the beginning of the paper, he said, we plan to enroll 40 women in our trial. So does that surprise anybody? Somebody here, our Grand Knight, you know about statistics, right? Are you surprised that he only planned to enroll 40? You are, right? Why? Well, you're not accounting for people dropping out, right? So if you need 40, you'd probably enroll 60 because you know people might move away, or they might get tired of being in the study, or maybe somebody gets in a car accident and can't participate in the study. So studies always have more enrolled than they need enrolled. But he said in the paper itself, I only plan to enroll 40. So I was curious, and that made me think maybe he wasn't planning to do a serious study. Well then, we'll see that he canceled it early because of safety concerns. And there were 3 women that he pointed out that called 911 because of, quote, heavy bleeding. The first woman was in the progesterone group. And she was bleeding like women do when they take the abortion pill. She called 911. When she got to the emergency room, the paper says she needed no further treatment. In other words, she didn't need to be in the emergency department. So she panicked, which was okay, right? Women panic in this kind of situation. But there's no reason to stop a study because a woman panicked and called 911 when she didn't need to be in the emergency room, right? Okay, so that's the first one. The second 2 were both in the placebo group. They did not get progesterone. They only got placebo. They got mifepristone and then the placebo. Both of them needed emergency surgical abortions. And one of them needed a blood transfusion because she bled so much. So after that third one was when the study was stopped. So they've been saying since this study was published that abortion pill reversal is not safe. But I look at the 3 patients, and this doesn't prove abortion pill reversal is not safe. If anything, it proves that taking mifepristone and not doing anything else is unsafe. That not taking progesterone is unsafe. So, but you see they've been twisting this, and you've probably read stories about this in the media. The other thing that this study did show was that abortion pill reversal is effective because in the women who are in the progesterone group, 80% of those preborn babies survive the 2 weeks. So it's 80% effectiveness rate, while there was about a 35% of survival of those who were in the placebo group. So it actually supported our data, which shows a very good survival when you do give progesterone. So that's an important thing to know about that study in case you read about it. And then there's Dr. Daniel Grossman at UCSF, who's a very strong abortion proponent. He's medical director of the Bixby Center and does all sorts of abortion advocacy. And Dr. Grossman said that, and quoted an article, progesterone probably won't hurt a woman if she's under medical supervision. In other words, he's saying that it's safe. But he's concerned that the advertising of this procedure could mislead the public about the prevalence of abortion regret. So this explains exactly why Dr. Grossman and others are so vehemently opposed to us, why it's been like Goliath against David ever since they heard about abortion pill reversal, because they know that if women, or if the general public realizes that some women want to reverse their chemical abortions, that means that some women regret the choice to have an abortion, and that means that abortion is not the great good that they've been telling everybody it is, right? Because if it was the great good, then why would some women regret starting their abortions? So this is why they're coming after us. It's not because they care about women, not at all. They don't care about women because they don't want to offer women a second chance at choice. They only want women to have that first choice to choose abortion, and once they make that choice, there's no turning back because abortion is their false god. And this abortion pill reversal questions that narrative that abortion is a great good for women. And they say that it's junk science, but I say it's not junk science, it's just new science. And we have 3 pillars that I like to mention about abortion pill reversal. First, the biologic logic. We know that whenever you study any kind of biochemical system, when there are 2 molecules that compete for one receptor, if you raise the concentration of one, it's going to win the race to that receptor. You raise the concentration of the other, it's going to win the race. And in fact, the studies that were done early on with RU46 by Dr. Ballou and others, they actually showed that they were competitive. Mifepristone is a competitive inhibitor. That means it competes with progesterone. And that when you raise the concentration of progesterone, the mifepristone was ineffective in the test tube. But when you raise the concentration of the mifepristone, it was effective. And the reason why it was studied and adopted as an abortifacient was because mifepristone competes with progesterone for the receptor. So it makes biologic sense. Our animal models. Early on, they had an animal model where they had 2 groups of pregnant rats. One group, they gave mifepristone only. That group of rats aborted all of their pups. The other group, they gave mifepristone and progesterone at the same time. None of their pups aborted in one study. So when we brought that up, they said, well, but you don't give progesterone at the same time as mifepristone, which is true. So Dr. Stephen Samut, a colleague of mine who's been working together with me, collaborating at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, he has a rat lab, and he's a neuroscience researcher. He developed a rat model of medical abortion, of chemical abortion, and then the next experiment that has been published in the peer-reviewed literature, he gave the rats mifepristone. One group got then placebo, one group later got progesterone at a timing that was equivalent to the human timing, and those rats, they did not abort their pups. And it also showed that the abortion process actually did start, but then it was reversed. So the word reversal that we've used all along, that we coined many years ago, is actually a good word to use for this process, abortion pill reversal, because that's what really happens. And then finally, of course, is our data, our published studies that you can find on our website, as well as over 5,000 babies who have been born. 5,000 babies born after abortion pill reversal don't lie about the effectiveness of abortion pill reversal. And they often say that people don't change their minds. Dr. Grossman has been quoted as saying that it's extremely rare that a woman would change her mind after starting the chemical abortion process. So there's no reason to cause them anxiety or cause them guilt by giving them the information about abortion pill reversal. However, commonly quoted studies suggest that 10% of women have ambivalence. And in fact, a study done by Dr. Crennan itself in the UK, where they looked at women who had taken actually both abortion pills, and there was a group of these women, about 100 of them, who had continued pregnancies. That is, their chemical abortions had failed. And they asked them, well, what do you want to do? 10% of those women who faced the concrete reality of a failed chemical abortion said, I want to continue my pregnancy. And what made this even more important is that I didn't go into much detail about the second drug, misoprostol, because I'm here to talk about the first drug, right? Mifepristone. But misoprostol does cause birth defects. Increases the chance of birth defects 2 to 4-fold. Mifepristone does not cause birth defects. We already talked about that. But the second drug does. And this group of women had gotten both drugs. And yet 10% of them still chose to continue their pregnancies. So women can and do change their minds. And other studies by Dr. Priscilla Coleman show that probably the rate of ambivalence and of women having second thoughts is much higher than this 10%. All right, so here's that QR code again. So we have plenty of time now for questions and answers. Yes? Yes, very good point. So progesterone has been used safely in pregnancy for over 50 years. And for abortion pill reversal, we use and advocate bioidentical progesterone. What that means is that the progesterone molecule that she's taking by mouth is identical to the progesterone molecule that's being made in her body. The body cannot distinguish. So this is a hormone that's in very high levels during pregnancy. So giving a little extra is very, very safe. And it's been used in pregnancy, like she said, for 50 years to help women who have low progesterone levels and who are looking like they might miscarry to help prevent miscarriage. Yes.
As you indicated, I had already been thinking this, it would be unethical for you to do a double-blind study of the success. But, I'm sorry, thank you. Do you have any estimates as to how effective this is? And I assume it's probably going to be related to how early you can catch it. But do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, we do. So what we did was we've published a couple of papers. One by my colleague, Dr. Mary Davenport, looked back at the original studies they did where they're only using mifepristone. They had not introduced the second drug yet. And what she found there, and these studies, she had to be very careful. She did most of the work on this, but my name's also on the paper. But you have to look very carefully at these studies, because if the study did not use ultrasound to see if the preborn baby was still alive, then it's really hard to determine. A lot of them just went by bleeding or by hormone levels, which is not the direct way. The direct way is doing ultrasound and seeing that the baby's still alive by heartbeat. And some of them only waited a couple of days before, if the baby was still alive, then they would do the surgical abortion. So some of them overestimated survival, because the mifepristone doesn't just act like that. It can take a day or 2 or 3 or 4 for the baby to die. So really, a properly done study, if you could say that, would be like to wait at least 5 days. But anyway, she looked at all of those early studies, and the conclusion was that at best 25% survive. So this is from real data, from experimental data. So we use that as what we call our historical control, because we would never do a study where we had a placebo group where the woman did not get anything because the baby would be doomed to die, right? And then so in our observational study where we followed women who had started the abortion pill reversal process, that's where we got with our best protocol 68% survival. So that's how we can compare 68% with 25%. So what we want to do in the future is we want to have a randomized controlled trial where we have women in 2 groups that are randomized by a computer, but instead of having a treatment group and a placebo group, we're going to have 2 treatment groups and we're going to compare different treatments. And so that's the one that's stuck right now in the FDA, and we hope to get launched. And if we can't do it here, we'll probably do it in Russia. Yes, Bernie. Go ahead, Bernie. Oh, he needs the microphone. Oh, well. You go ahead.
A couple of questions. What about the idea of informed consent? In other words, whoever is prescribing this has to get informed consent. Do they even do this?
Informed consent for abortion pill reversal? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So from the very start, we were very, very careful because we knew we would be attacked by ACOG and ACLU and Planned Parenthood, which they have. And so we were very careful from the very, very beginning when Debbie and I started this to make sure that we had a very good informed consent process. Informed consent is like anytime, let's say you go in for a surgery, what do they tell you? Okay, these are the benefits you might see, these are the possible complications, right? And they ask you, do you understand that? And you say yes, and then you sign a paper. So from the very beginning, we've had a very good informed consent process, and told them what the possible risks are, what the benefits are, how, when we were very early on, we would tell them that this is something that has not been tested, this is something very, very new. Now, of course, it's no longer experimental, it's now not even novel. I would say in some areas it's established care, but even to this day, Heartbeat International has them sign an informed consent statement.
The question, maybe I phrased it wrong. What about the people that are prescribing the RU486? Do they get informed consent?
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
So the question is, what about people prescribing the mifepristone, the RU486? Well, ostensibly they do, but anecdotally we hear from women who have gone to those clinics and then come and talk to us that they're not explained what's really going on. And in fact, on the abortion pill reversal website, there's information there. There's a big section on what happens with the chemical abortion process. And several women have commented to our hotline nurses that they got more information reading that than they did from the abortion center. So no, I don't think they're giving them good informed consent at the abortion centers.
One more question.
Yes.
Dr. Crinan, how did he even get authorization to even do those studies? The informed, with that.
Yeah, so he got permission from the UC Davis Institutional Review Board. These are the ethics panels that approve these studies. And, well, I guess medicine, mainstream medicine is very, very pro-death. So that's their slant, so that's why they'd approve that study. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Delgato. Dr.
Crinan?
Crinan, yeah. His study actually proved that progesterone was much better than was advertised. He never published a study, though, right?
No, so he published his study, And I wouldn't say that his study proved that progesterone was effective. The reason why I don't say that, and I think was his little safety valve, is that, remember, to get statistical significance, he calculated he needed to have 40 patients. So since the study only ended up enrolling 12, he now can say, well, the study was not statistically significant. The results we got could have been due to chance, just like if we only did the coin flip 5 times, right? So that's why we can't say it proves it. What I say is that his results were consistent with what we saw.
What you see,
They
right.
were consistent with it, yes.
And what do you have any kind of graph to show, I think the maximum time between when you can take the APR from the time that you've been given the first abortion, the chemical abortion pill. Do you see it? Obviously, you must see it better at 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and even beyond?
We haven't seen any success beyond 72 hours, but partly that was because that was one of our exclusion lines to not look at that. So we really don't know, but we think that by 72 hours, it may not be worthwhile. So we tell people if they're past 72 hours, do an ultrasound first. If the baby's still alive, then give progesterone because there's probably some recovery that needs to take place. But I'm really happy to say that these days through the Abortion Pill Rescue Network, that probably 90% of women are getting on progesterone at 24 hours or earlier after taking mifepristone. So they're getting on it really early. So that's really good.
That's very. And one last question, and that is the network you talk about. Are there thousands of doctors that are available, or physicians' assistants available to give the progesterone injections?
Yeah, so in the network, I think there are about 1,000 doctors and clinics across the country, something like that. So we definitely need more, but every major metropolitan area has at least one physician or clinic that is in the network and is capable and willing to treat these women. So that's very, very good.
And just thought of another one, and that is that it seems as though we need more advertising, because women who are pregnant, can this be reversed? They make that decision and they just think, well, I'm going to have an abortion. If they knew that there was this available, and many of them do, obviously, you're getting 10% regret. But I mean, if we could do some national advertising, it would really make a big, big difference.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And Heartbeat International has and is doing national advertising mostly on the web, doing internet advertising, because that's where these women go when they're in crisis. They go on their smartphone and look it up. But there's been pushback there. In fact, in Live Action, Lila Rose's group, they were doing a lot of good advertising, but they got knocked off of, I think, Google Ads and I think Facebook also, because, of course, these are culture of death aligned companies that under the banner of banning misinformation, ban life-saving care. So they're still working on that, different angles. But I think what's even more important is the grassroots, and that is all of you have spheres of influence, whether it's family, friends, coworkers. And so for you to spread the word about abortion pill reversal so that people know about it, so that when somebody's daughter is in this situation, your friend says, oh yeah, I remember Joe talked about this. Hey, there's this thing called abortion pill reversal. Or for the woman herself who already knows about it, so that if she does get into that situation, she takes the chemical abortion pill, then she remembers, oh yeah, there's a way to reverse it, and she pursues it. So we want to attack it from all levels, but I think people have conversions of hearts in the context of relationships, so this is the kind of thing that's most important, I think, for all of you in your spheres of influence. I think Twitter might have been censoring us also, but I'm not sure. Oh, not with Elon Musk, yeah. It's probably different now, yeah. But before, I think they were, yeah.
It really would be great. I just came up from a pharmacy, and they got all these displays about Narcan. So why don't you have them reversal pill advertisements there, so in case they have second thoughts.
We would if they would let us. And so mainstream pharmacy is very much aligned with the culture of death too. So little by little, yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yes. So the progesterone is taken until the end of the first trimester or 2 weeks, whichever is longer.
The second question is from a practical point of view, at an abortion. You know, in our sphere of instance or an abortion clinic, we come across someone. Is Coles the only place that we can have them get it in San Diego, or are there multiple places that we can send them in San Diego from a practical point of view?
If you have someone with multiple pregnancies, where can you?
No.
I didn't get.
Where can they get this pill? Where can they go for the reversal? Is it just
Oh, for
Coles,
the
or are there
reversal.
multiple places?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, we can get it at Culture of Life Family Services. We have offices in Escondido and San Diego. Birth Choice is thinking about it, right, Doreen? True Choices, you're considering it also? Okay, great. So it'll be popping up in more places, yeah.
So on a weekend, you
So on
have
the weekend, you can call Culture of Life Family Services until we know about these other places, or they can call the hotline, and then the hotline will call us.
what is the hotline
And
number?
you'll find it at abortionpillreversal.com.
Okay, thank you.
Who's next?
Right here. So I know the FDA is fighting you over approving it. Are you facing any actual legal lawsuits that you're trying to fight as well?
No. So I'm very happy to say that I'm not aware, and since we've been doing this in 2012, of any lawsuits against any APR provider. And I think that's because we care about women, we're compassionate, and we're very, very careful. We do things the right way.
Is there any way to reverse the
Microphone? No, we want the microphone because they're recording this.
Are there any reversals of the cytotech? In other words,
Is there any reversal of the second drug, the cytotech misoprostol? There is not, but that's something we're going to be researching with Dr. Samut, because in veterinary medicine, so I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but the misoprostol, the one that causes the contractions, it is what we call a prostaglandin analog. It acts like a prostaglandin in the body. And that's why it's used sometimes to induce labor in women. So in veterinary medicine, there is a prostaglandin blocker that's used for dogs who have arthritis and other things. And so we hope to study that drug in rats to see if it can reverse misoprostol. And that way we want to be one step ahead, because think about what would happen if mifepristone were outlawed. Well, we know what's going to happen because California, Governor Newsom has already stockpiled misoprostol. And so they would just go to that. And so we want to try to stay one step ahead of them. And we're still okay on time? Oh, we're supposed to be over soon. Well, there's a whole lawsuit that I'm part of, but I won't go into that right now because it's going to take too long. Any other questions? Second to the last and last. You need to get the microphone.
I'm the nurse manager at True Choice, and we really want to start the program. So we've already spoken to Heartbeat International. They've sent us everything. So would we be able to collaborate with Colfs if we needed to? I know the patients have to be seen within 72 hours, and we have a medical director, but they're not like there all the time.
Sure, we'd love to
So we
collaborate
have
with you.
easy access. Okay.
If there's any damage to a fetus, say somebody goes just a little beyond the 48 hours, well, would there be damage to the fetus? And is that something that the fetus can recover from over time?
So the question is, could there be any damage to the preborn baby if you give the progesterone too late, essentially what you're asking. No, we don't think so, because all the studies done have shown no increase of birth defects. And that's with women who've waited longer than 48 hours. And we're also, I talked about ACOG being very much against us, but when your enemy says something that supports you, you know you can believe it, right? So they've come out with 2 practice bulletins. The last one was in 2022 that says that mifepristone does not cause birth defects. So we're confident that it does not. And we know that progesterone doesn't either. So the two together are not going to cause birth defects. So it doesn't matter. So if you were to wait too long, the risk would be that the preborn baby would die. So it looks like because the mifepristone acts on the placenta, not on the baby itself, that it either kills the baby or it doesn't. So no risk of birth defects. All right. Well, thank you very much for your great questions. And